Hi, this is Sue for Parkinson Me, my journey with Parkinson's. I was reading a blog that I follow by a woman who calls herself Twitchy Woman, which actually I really like that name. It's very apt for those of us with Parkinson's. We can be obviously a bit twitchy from time to time. But anyway, I was reading her post and it was a really good one. It was about seeing your neurologist, and she recommends that you type up some questions on your computer and take those into the appointment so that you don't forget to ask those important questions. And yeah, that's a really good idea. But if you don't have a computer, and even if you do, I often recommend that people carry a notebook with them and write things down as they occur to them. Because sometimes you can think, oh, I was going to tell him about my sore foot, or I was going to tell him about such and such, and you can't immediately recall it. And memory is a funny thing. I used to work with people with dementia many years ago, and it was interesting how memory acts in different ways. Now, people with dementia can have some really good memories of things that happened when they were younger, in their earlier married lives perhaps, but not so good to try and remember things that have happened even this morning. You ask them what they had for breakfast and they can't tell you whether it was cornflakes, Weet-Bix or porridge. And after all, what does it matter? It's not a memory that needs to be held on to. So there isn't that kind of emotional underlay or overlay that makes memory stronger. And I've found in my work with people with dementia that if there's an emotional element to the memory, then it tends to stick there. And I have a bit of a funny story. When I worked for this organisation working with people with dementia, we used to hold a memory group every week. And this particular week, there was myself and another worker that co-facilitated this group meeting. And we only had, 3 guys turn up for this meeting. And it wasn't really enough for a group session. So we decided to take them for a drive. Now, my co-worker got in the driver's seat and one of the group members got in the front, and then I was in the middle of 2 gentlemen in the back seat. Now, the gentleman on my left, who happened to be where my seatbelt needed to plug in, I was ferreting around trying to find the end to plug my seatbelt in, and he looked at me, and I was obviously quite near his bottom, and he looked at me with a big grin, and he had a bit of a wicked sense of humour. And I said to him, I'm just trying to find the end of my seatbelt. And he just grinned at me and we both laughed. Now, this was a person who had memory issues, who had dementia, who had trouble hanging on to memories. And the next week, I came into the group, and not long into the group, he turned to me and said something about the event of me fossicking around near his buttocks in the car. And I looked at him, I said, just when you want somebody to forget, you had to remember that, didn't you? And we all laughed. So yeah, he obviously kept that hold of that memory because we had a bit of a laugh, and it made his day, I think, that we could have that little interaction. As innocent as it was, but there was obviously some emotional connection there for him. Yeah, memory tends to stick around a bit more if there's an emotional content. But anyway, back to seeing your GP or specialist. It's really important to get the most out of those appointments. Your GP you usually see more often, but your specialist less. So you'll probably have some time waiting before you see them. So yeah, it is a good idea to write them down in some form, whether you type them, whether you write them. But make sure you bring those questions with you and make sure that you have them answered. And the other thing that I always recommend is take someone with you. I know when I go to my GP, especially recently with the medications that I've had, it makes my memory a bit fuzzy. And I really appreciate having my husband with me when I go to those appointments. And he will sit there and he will let me say he will let me ask the questions of my GP, and I will sometimes turn to him and say, is there anything that I've forgotten? Is there anything I need to add? And he will say yay or nay and fill in any blanks that I may have missed. And it's really useful as well, not just for the appointment, but after the appointment. Sometimes I think I go on information overload and all the information doesn't stick necessarily in my brain. And so having had my husband with me, I can then turn to him and go, when did he say I would be able to drive? Or how often do I need to take that medication? What was the medication he said I should start to taper off, and how should I do it? It's not that I wasn't listening, it's just that there was so much information often in those appointments that you don't always recall it all. So I always recommend, even in those early stages, that you think about having somebody come with you, whether it's a friend, whether it's a daughter, a granddaughter, your husband, your wife, partner, whoever, but just somebody you feel comfortable with coming into the doctor with you. I always recommend that you take somebody when you're going to those appointments. It's also good when, like at the moment, I'm recovering from my operation and I'm going to a physiotherapist. I probably only have to go a couple of times, but my husband took note of the exercises that he asked me to do, because I find even when I tell physios that I will not remember what they've told me to do, they still insist on just giving me verbal information and running me through the exercises at that appointment. Now, if somebody runs me through some exercises at an appointment, that's all well and good, but I tell you what, I get home and try to do those exercises without any guidance, and I've forgotten half of them. So, of course, the upshot of that is that I don't do the exercises if I can't remember them. So my husband comes to my physio appointments as well and helps me to remember, or reminds me, what those exercises are. And I find that invaluable. So, like I said, memory can work in strange ways. Emotional overlay can make memories stick, things that you remember from your childhood, special moments with those you love over the years, they can all stick. Because they have that emotional content, they tend to stick in the brain better and be able to be retrieved more. But the other side of the thing is, emotion can also count against you when it comes to memory. I know when I go to an appointment and I'm anxious and nervous and worried, all those emotions make it hard for me to remember. And so I have my separate memory with me, my husband, who will ask the questions for me, and he's very good. He waits for me to say, is there anything else that I've forgotten? He doesn't necessarily chip in and take away my opportunity to do for myself, but he is there listening, he is there supporting, and he is there if I ask, is there anything else I need to remember? And often I'll turn to him at the end of an appointment and say, did you get all that? Because I don't know if I did for sure. And he usually nods and smiles and said, yes, I got all that. And he usually has. So, take-home message, if you're going to see anybody in the medical profession, if you're going to see a specialist, your GP, a physio, anybody who is going to give you advice that you need to remember, if you can, bring somebody with you. If you can't, bring a notebook, write it down, or ask them to write it down for you. Sometimes when you go to see a physiotherapist, there are exercises that they can send you. There's a thing called Physio app that my physiotherapist often uses, and it's a program that's very good, and it actually brings up the exercises and somebody is showing you how to do it. It's an animated thing, and it's very good. So yeah, always ask if you can have some sort of exercise written down if you're going to see a physio with diagrams, or whether there's something like this Physio app that you can tap into that has the exercises that you need. The more information that you can write down, the better, because we do have a brain that's affected by this condition, and its memory and retention is likely to be less than ideal. So we need to give it aids to help. So just a few ideas about seeing medical professionals and allied health, such as physios, in the community. So this has been Sue for Parkies and Me, my journey with Parkinson's. Kia kaha, be brave, be strong, be you.